Thanks everyone for coming out to take a look at the sneak peek of what's coming in Clarity 2023.1. So before we get started, the lawyers always make us put up these couple of slides just saying that if there's anything that you see here, you shouldn't buy the product based on what you see, because you never know if things could disappear between the beta version and the finished version. But I think everybody invited here is already a customer, so I don't know that it applies to you, but don't buy any more copies until these features show up in the finished version. So as usual, we're going to just briefly gloss over the Clarity release history, the 23.1 release specifics, and as usual, our enhancements in this 0.1 release are very much customer driven by things that people have asked for, either in general or very specifically in some cases. So we'll take a look at these various theme areas and the enhancements within them. So moving forward, we've generally been on a cadence of 2 releases per year, one in the spring, where we do the compatibility release with the new Autodesk version, and then one in the fall, the 0.1 version, which is just a feature release. We've struggled a little bit, I would say, this year, because we normally try to time this for Autodesk University, and with Autodesk University being so early in the season, we kind of struggled with can we really make something in time for that or not. We eventually decided not, but I would say that Autodesk University sort of messed with this 0.1 release a little bit. But yeah, we're still on the same 2 releases per year kind of cadence. I think it's not impossible that we might drop to 1 release in the next couple of years as more of our effort starts going to the Clarity Cloud side of things over time. So Clarity 2023.1, just like Clarity 2023.0, both of them support Revit and Revit Server 2019 through 2023, with limited support for Revit 2018 tasks running on a 2022.1 task server that you leave behind. You can still connect that older task server up to the newest Clarity host. So that's still our same version support. That's still unchanged. So moving into the actual enhancements for this new 0.1 release, one of the things that we wanted to work on was something that we got occasional support calls for and occasional requests around being able to make batch changes to task configurations. While we have something called the Clarity Project Utility, which is a Windows tool on the host server that you can push some batch changes across. You really couldn't push anything which was sort of task parameter specific. And so when people had situations like needing to change the folder paths because some server name had changed or something like that, there wasn't really a good way to do that, and we would ultimately work through our support group and come up with a database hack to go in and let people search and replace things. And so we eventually figured now is the time to address this, and so we now have a new section within Clarity called Task Management that is really just sort of, we call it an administrative tool. We're hoping that people don't use it all the time, but anytime that you need to do that kind of massive change across projects with different kinds of scenarios, digging into the task parameters, we have a task management section within the application where you can sort of upfront filter on what kinds of things do you want to look at. So you can actually use it to just find things first and foremost. So if you're wondering who's using what kinds of tasks, or is anybody got something configured in a particular way, you can use it just for finding things first. Specific projects or all projects, specific task types or all task types, specific task parameters or across all the task parameters. So finding is the first part, and then once you've found those tasks, you're able to either You're able to batch delete them, or you're able to do a search and replace, so or basically a push of values into this particular, whatever values are found there. So you can do a search for a particular server name and replace it with another server name. You can replace values, any of those kinds of things. So, we're hoping that it's just a tool that lets people solve that particular problem of doing batch updates a little bit more easily than they have in the past. Moving forward, we've got an area that we call project templatization. This is another thing that people have asked for quite some time, especially if you count asking for how do we make a network folder that gets tracked for our project, and even if we're in BIM 360 or something like that. And so what we've done is we've introduced a new concept within Clarity called project parameters. So these are parameters that are going to be used and associated to your Clarity project, independent of your Revit project. And when you set up new projects or edit existing projects, you will be able to define as many custom project parameters as you would like. These are defined at the server level to say what our standard project parameters should be for any new or project that's being updated, and are these project parameters required. So you can define parameter names, whether they're required, their default values, that kind of thing. And then you can now use these parameter values inside of different places within Clarity. So first and foremost, people have asked, for a long time for tasks and like folder paths and that kind of thing, to be able to parameterize them so that it's easy to copy tasks into new projects and not have to go into each task and go fix the actual locations and that kind of thing that are stored within those tasks, those post-task actions, that kind of thing. So we cover tasks, we cover post-task actions, we cover data sheets. So your room and equipment data sheets can be driven by these task parameters, and project messages. So if you want to deck out your project message with things like the BIM coordinator and the BIM coordinator's email and that kind of thing, it just gets set up at the beginning when the project is defined, and it just gets populated at runtime. So this again is the server side setup where you define what you'd like to have, and then when you go in and add the actual project or edit the project, you'll see an additional section that says these are your project parameters. You can type the stuff in here. You can also add custom project parameters for just specific projects. So yeah, that's ultimately how the project parameters work, and we're hoping that helps people take their template projects or template tasks or that kind of thing to the next level by allowing you to separate out the configuration of a particular task to leverage project level parameters. So moving forward, we've also got something that falls into project lifecycle management. We recently, in 2023.0, we added new capabilities to be able to automatically add new projects to BIM, or projects that exist in BIM 360. We can just see them and automatically create them in Clarity. And people have been appreciating that, although it seems like we have some customers, especially if they've got a lot of projects inside of Clarity, there's a feeling that that organizationally it's hard to find people who are responsible for deactivating the project. And, as it gets late into the process, it's in construction or any number of other late phase kind of states, and people don't clean these projects up. especially, or if they go on hold or something like that. And so, again, driven by customer requests, we've added an optional auto deactivate. We'll watch the files. If the files haven't changed for X number of days, then we should just auto deactivate the project. And the project coordinators and admins will get an email notification that it's happened, but this will sort of clear up your list of Clarity projects on the All Projects page, and keep everything running smoothly and efficiently, and demanding the extra resources associated with all of those extra projects. This new area called Unified Sync is something that we're really excited about. And that's because the current state of how some of our tasks work, we haven't been happy with for a while. We have a wide variety of tasks in the download or sync kind of area. And it's been an area that's been growing in terms of people wanting to use our capabilities. And they all worked great if what you wanted was to synchronize between a folder on disk and this particular cloud service or where you were moving the files from. But in terms of being able to synchronize between two things, like saying, take BIM 360 and push it into ProjectWise, or take ProjectWise and push it into BIM 360, it was kind of a mixed bag. Some combinations worked nicely together. Others took what we'd refer to as duct tape, where you'd have to download things to an intermediate folder area and then set up a post-task action to turn around and deliver those files to their ultimate destination. And no one was really happy with that kind of situation. Ultimately, if you'd like to synchronize between this system and that system, you just want to pick the two things and configure it once. So our new unified sync task is our first cut at that. It's not going to address everything, but it's going to move us down the path towards a cleaner mechanism for synchronization. And the way it works is just, see, do I have to click on this? Yeah. So ultimately, you just click on the left side and pick which system it's coming from. Pick on the right side and what system is it going to, and is it a synchronization back and forth, or is it just sending the left side over to the right side? But just pick the two sides, configure whatever the configuration is on both sides, and we've got a fully consistent set of options in the middle about what options we support, whether we're just moving the latest files or changes or metadata or any number of things. Depending on your options, additional options might show up, but this is going to be the direction that we go in going forward, as well as in the cloud, where we're going to have just a unified sync mechanism where this is a first-class citizen to be able to move things directly from system to system. And you can see we're covering these, I don't know if you measure it as 5 or more like 7 different systems in this first version, and we hope to knock off all the rest of them by the spring. All right, moving on. From a data perspective, there's 2 enhancements that we're happy to get to. We've had integration with Power BI for some time using Microsoft SQL kind of connections, where you can connect to all 240 different project tables within our project data. But a couple of releases ago, I think we added support for OData, and OData makes it a lot easier to give Power users access to Clarity data inside of Microsoft Power BI or Excel or other tools like that for business intelligence. And we've gone in and expanded what we're covering with that. So we used to really just have a handful of the most commonly requested tables, but we've bumped up the number of tables that we support within the OData integration environment, particularly covering MEP, but there's a wide variety of other things that we also took on at the same time. So we're not quite at full parity with everything, but we're pushing further. And if there's something that you want to see that you don't see, let us know. The other thing that we did from a data perspective is, for those of you who have done or worked with our bidirectional editing mechanism, this is a mechanism where if you were looking at Revit-based data in our reports and data sheets, and you saw something there that was incorrect and you wanted to be able to fix it right there, we historically felt like that is always something that should flow through a human and so the way that we worked historically was you make changes, that generates a change request, a designated user on the project would be notified. The user opens Revit and says, show me the changes that have been requested and let me accept or reject them. The user still has to sync to central base export before it makes it all the way back around, and we have to do a database to being updated in the data sheet. And we still feel like this makes sense, particularly if you're going to let make, but we played designers making bad in asking that they had just made them created a new, go out and or reject all of them, if central and that kind of thing. And so shortening the cycle of making the changes and then getting those changes into Revit and then getting them re-exported so that they're official changes that are showing up on the data sheet. So that's what's new there. Moving into our Clarity Space Programming module, we, from the very beginning, from when we first released it, we got a lot of requests for something where someone had a finished design, or maybe it was a design in progress, and they said, can you make me a program from this design? Different scenarios for it. I thought it was in some cases, and I think there were cases. It's nice to start with all of the rooms, modify the program into something new rather than having to recreate exactly what you have. And in other cases, it was a project that was in the middle of the process, or any number of other things where they wanted to track things over time. So any of those, or even if it's doing 3 or 4 extra rooms, and you just want to be able to add those rooms to the program from Revit because they exist. We're covering all of those different scenarios with our new wizard tool inside of Revit to create or update a space program from an existing design. So it's just a 3-step process. You tell us, how do you want to create and group the requirements that you're making, and we will read the model, we'll generate the program, and we'll even take the requirement IDs that get created for it and push those back into Revit so that your model matches your program. So we're excited for that. We also had some customers that were using our Clarity for FF&E tracking. So what equipment is supposed to be in each room or room type. And we had that all built out, and we have the mechanisms for checking and tracking and that kind of thing. But the one thing that was sort of missing from that was getting a list of 10,000 items into the Clarity server. We had, you could do it one by one through the user interface. You could do it via the API, but to make it more friendly, we now have a spreadsheet import where you can take however many pieces of equipment for the whole project and what room they're supposed to be in, and just bulk load that all into the system via spreadsheet. And that way, it's an easier way to get all of those requirements into the system or out, exporting. And then beyond these sort of bigger features, I would say that there's a bunch of small features that people have asked about, and we've tried to include. And this is just a partial list. I think there's even more, but the things I'll mention in passing: launchable tasks, so being able to customize the actual targeted models when you do a launchable task, so that if it's normally set up to run against 10 models, but you just need to launch it and just run one, you have the ability to go in and override that and say, I just want to run against this one. Publish Revit model. In the era of BIM 360, we were generally more and more confusion about what does publish Revit model do. We've officially finally broken down and renamed it to transmit Revit model. We've got some features for being able to link directly from your Clarity project homepage to the BIM page, better handling of XREFs within ProjectWise for tasks, better UI for file filters, to data export for things about models, views, and that kind of thing. A bunch of smaller enhancements as well. So with that, I mean, that's what's included in our 2023.1 version. And at this point, I mean, I will go into the QA section in a moment, but I'd feedback on what you saw, see if anybody could give us interesting and that it's or not enough. We would you to spend a week while we're running the beta, just a week, and is running through November 30th, at which point we expect to release the official 3.1. So we really just have a few weeks here to get more feedback and wrap up changes. And easiest way for you to do that is just ask us for an account on our server, or have a 10-minute, have a 30-minute, have a 1-hour session with us to take a look at any of these new features. We're overjoyed feedback during the process on any kind of basis. So that's the easiest way to do it. And then if you have interest in doing a deeper trial and you want to try to install the beta version or that kind of thing, we would bend over backwards to make that happen for you, because that's something it's hard for us to work out everything in the lab that could happen. So having outside companies try out the beta install would be fantastic.